This is Famous Adventures. I'm Thomas, and this is what we're doing today. Let's go. Time to put the new lower ball joint in. I went ahead and wiped out where the lower ball joint's gonna go a little bit. Could give it a light sanding, but I think that's just fine. I'll go ahead and put just a little bit of grease around this ring here so it slides in a little bit easier. Not much, just a little bit. Here's a new ball joint. Go ahead and pound that through. So the new lower ball joint will come with a new castle nut, snap ring, and cotter pin. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and punch that through there. Before punching this lower ball joint through, I'm going to have to take this rubber off so I don't completely destroy it. It's just this little ring that kind of goes over the top there. And then this should kind of pop right off here. Just kind of go ahead and peel that away. And the little rubber boot will come off. Fresh grease in there. Now it's ready to punch through. Grease this up a little bit as well. Now trying to pound it back in as straight and true as possible here. Just like that, the lower ball joint is now in. Went in pretty smooth. Now just got to reset this boot, this little rubber boot, put that back in its place, and then set this little ring clip back in, and then that will be ready to go. Brand new lower ball joint. Just got to put this ring back into place. It just sits right on top of that wheel bearing. Give it a little tap. Good to go. So after I got this new lower ball joint in place, and before I put back on this little boot here, I did in fact put on the new snap ring, and you could see that right there. Focuses. So I did put on the snap ring. You do want to put that on before you put on this rubber boot, and then it's all buttoned up and ready to go. I am doing both sides of the car. So just round 2 on this lower ball joint. Same exact process as the first one. So I got the new inner tie rods here. Now for the outer ones, they are obviously different from the passenger side to the driver's side. But the inner ones here, I'll go ahead and show you, are exactly identical. So there's nothing different about the inner tie rods for the 91 Integra. Exactly the same size, same length. Again, nothing different about them. So I'm gonna go ahead and install those now, because I do gotta get this part back to the part store. It is a rental. It costs about $100, and yeah. So once I return this, then I'll get that $100 back into my account, which will be nice. All right. So a great tip when you're working on vehicles or any kind of mechanic work, when you take something off, be sure to pay close attention to obviously how it was on there. That being said, the two washers that came with the new inner tie rod, one obviously has a curve and the other one is flat. But if you're watching how you took out the old one, or in this case when I took out the old one, the one washer that's not flat, the curved part is going to be with these little dimples. It's going to be facing outwards. So you go ahead and place that one on first. And then you go ahead and put on the flat washer on top. Alright, and just like that, the new inner tie rod is in. Now I just got to go ahead and install the boot or the bellow, and then it's time to put that outer tie rod on. Alright, so the passenger side inner tie rod is installed, and now same thing, just with the driver's side. Put the washers on the right way. So everything is not going to work out as smoothly as you want it to, such as this inner tie rod tool. Here's the right size I need for the inner tie rod, and it's supposed to just fall right into place here, but for whatever reason, this little bit here does not want to drop into place. Therefore, you can't lock it into place. And so I got it in there enough and was just holding the back of it with my hand. And I got the job done. But that's just an example of things not going as smoothly as you'd like it to. But still getting the job done. So I got the inner tie rod in. Now I just got to put these boots in there, also called bellows. There's a little hose in the back there that connects to this little nipple. The fatter side goes on the inside, and this little skinny side will be facing outwards like that. And it comes with a rubber boot and two zip ties, a small one for the front and a bigger one for the back. So once you get it in place, you got a zip tie in the back here, and then the front here. Alright, so as you can see, the boot is now in place. So it's connected back here and in front here. They both have a groove that they sit on, that you'll know that they're in place. And then the small zip tie, the larger zip tie in back. And then lastly, there's this little vent hose and a little vent nipple here. And then that's connected as well. And that's the whole entire inner tie rod. Now good to go, fully replaced. Alright, so passenger side boot is on. Now I'm over here on the driver's side. Same exact method as passenger side. Same thing, got the boot, got the vent, got the two zip ties. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the same exact thing as I did on the other side. So the one thing that's different about this inner tie rod on the driver's side is actually putting on the boot. And in order to get it seated in the rear there, you are going to have to take out this plate, which is just 3 12mm bolts there. So same thing for the most part, except you got this in the way. First hiccup in this front end replacement process with these import direct, supposedly OE replacement lower control arms. Double checked with O'Reilly's, and supposedly this part number matches up with what I had asked for, which was a 1991 AcuraIntegra lower control arm. But these two bolts here, or where these two bolts are supposed to go, do not line up. Slight difference, but I literally spent like an hour trying to get this lined up. Way more time than I should have. Mocked this one back up. Of course, it went in real quick and easy. That's the original one. So I got these new axles for the 91 AcuraIntegra. And they are very similar, same length, everything about them is pretty similar. The main thing that you could tell whether or not it goes on the driver's side or the passenger side is going to be the splines on the inner side. So obviously these are the outer portion of the axles. Here's the axle nut. Here's the inner part of the axles. So driver's side is going to have the splines that go all the way back, and then the passenger side is going to have the half splines, and then this like smooth part of the shaft. And that is how you tell whether or not your axle goes on the driver's side or the passenger side. So change of plans on the front lower control arms. The new ones that I had ordered weren't the right fitment, even though they were supposedly for this exact make and model. So I'm just going to go ahead and reinstall the old ones. Looks like they'll do for a while more. So yeah, I'm just going to reinstall the old lower control arms this time. Got this passenger side axle in. Just kind of lubed up the splines a little bit. Kind of shoved it on in. So axle's in place, ready to go. Start putting the rest of this together. Time to tighten down this lower control arm here. Got 2 through bolts, one right here in front of me where the wishbone connects, and it's just going to be 2 17s, one on each side. These 2 17s as well, right here and here. Those get tightened down. Got these little stack of bushings here, and these are all 12 millimeters. This little one will keep it in place while you tighten the upper and lower bolts, and then just the one in the back here, which you can see it on this side right here, and that's going to be a 14 millimeter. Just going to go ahead and tighten all that down nice and tight, and then the lower control arm will be good to go. Now that I got this lower control arm all tightened up, I'm going to move up here to the upper control arm, and I'm going to install this upper ball joint. It's just the 4 Allen wrench bolts, and it'll go right there. Upper ball joint is nice and tight in place. Now I'm just going to go ahead and grab this knuckle and go ahead and put that back on. Go ahead and get this castle nut out of the way. Get this axle nut out of the way. Cut off these zip ties, and then I'll be ready for that knuckle. So the lower ball joint here came with a new castle nut and new cotter pin. I'll go ahead and install this. Alright, last step for this is just pushing that cotter pin through and then bending it on and around. And that lower ball joint is all tightened up. Solid. Just gotta tighten this upper ball joint to the knuckle here. Got a little castle nut here, as well as a cotter pin. Go ahead and put this to torque, and then push that cotter pin through, and then wrap it around, and the upper ball joint to the top knuckle will be good to go. Just gonna go ahead and put this axle nut on, just hand tight for now, and I'll tighten it up the rest of the way. A little bit more before I drop the car, and then finish it tightening it to torque once I get this car dropped on the ground. So next step is I'm gonna go ahead and put on this outer tie rod, put that into place there. Alright, so I'm going to install this outer tie rod right now. So here it is. It's got this little nut here screwed in first, and that'll set this outer tie rod in place. Now I went ahead and counted how many turns it took to take this one off, so I'd be pretty close to alignment. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn this in about 17 to 19 full turns, and that's where it should be pretty close to alignment. And then tighten the set screw to the back of this here, and then go ahead and put it into place where it goes on the knuckle here. So here's the outer tie rod. Just put it to the place it goes on the knuckle. Another castle nut, another cotter pin. Just gotta go ahead and set these into place. And this is looking pretty good here on the passenger side of the front end. I think this is the last main component before I could put on the tire and lower it down. I do have to finish up the driver's side though, but passenger side is looking good. So lastly, I just have to put back on the caliper here. This is going to be the 217s on the back of this disc brake here. And this is the brake hose here. There's just these two little 10mm bolts. Just gotta go ahead and put this into place here and tighten that up. Can't forget this upper ball joint, castle nut, little cover here on this top knuckle piece. It's just a couple more 10mm. I'm just going to put those in real quick. Alright, that's feeling really solid. No wobbles whatsoever. That's what I was going for. Yeah, seems super solid. Very nice. Just gotta button up this driver's side now. Now that I got this inner tie rod put in and the boot is all seated and that's all good to go, the next step, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and put in this driver's side axle. I got a brand new one here that I'm going to be putting in. Got some grease and hopefully it doesn't hang up on me too much, and see how this goes. driver's side axle is now in. The driver's side axle did take a bit more of a nudge than the passenger side, but nevertheless it went in. And I'm just going to go ahead and zip tie this to the top of this wishbone here to kind of clear the way to put in this lower control arm. Over here on the driver's side, axle went in, a little extra nudge, but smoother than I thought it would be. So now I'm just going to go ahead and put in this lower control arm here. Same process as the other side. Hopefully a little bit better lighting. So the rear bolt on this car for the lower control arm is going to be a 14mm. Now that the lower control arm's all torqued down, I'm going to go ahead and install this outer tie rod end here. And I counted how many threads that it took to come off. That way when I put it back on, I'm going to go ahead and count the threads at full rotation. So when I tighten it down here, it's going to be pretty close to the alignment when I took it off. So this outer tie rod is kind of mocked up here. It's in the right place. It's not tightened down at all because I'm ready to go ahead and install. Oh, actually I got to install this upper ball joint before I put on the knuckle. So I guess it's time to go ahead and install this upper ball joint here, which skunk 2 fully adjustables and just the 4 Allen wrench bolts there on the bottom. You kind of just get sandwiched in between this upper control arm here. So when I go ahead and install this upper ball joint, the actual ball joint kind of goes underneath the upper control arm here, and then this little plate goes on top, and then it kind of just sandwiches in, and you torque it down to spec, and then it'll hold it in there. For the top ball joint here, skunk 2, it's going to be a 5mm Allen wrench. When you tighten down anything like this, go in a cross pattern. Alright, now that I got this top ball joint all tightened down to spec, I'm gonna go ahead and take off its castle nut, take off this axle nut, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut these zip ties that I used to hold up this axle while I was getting the lower control arm in. That way, I'm gonna go ahead and set this this knuckle into place and go from there. Right, this knuckle's in place, along with the wheel hub and everything else. Go ahead and set it in this outer tie rod into the hub there. Now every bolt on this hub has a castle nut and a cotter pin. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. Outer tie rod. Upper ball joint. Axle nut. Lower ball joint, castle nut. Alright, so I'm just gonna go and tighten these 3 castle nuts to spec, as well as installing the cotter pins. Again, it's just the one for the outer tie rod, lower ball joint, upper ball joint. Also have to tighten up this outer tie rod with this little set bolt here. It just backs up right onto the outer tie rod here. Now I just got this brake line hose here. 2 little baby 10mm. It just gets supported right here on the knuckle. Starting to lose some daylight, but just got this cover here for the upper ball joint castle nut, and it's just a little cover that goes right there. And I believe it's just 2 10mm bolts. Go right there and there. I'm gonna go ahead and button that up. Alright, so for this axle bolt here, or axle nut, there's this little flat spot here on the axle, and that's where I'm going to go ahead and with like a flathead screwdriver and a little hammer, I'm just going to knock this little notch into this. Alright, so I'm all done with the front suspension. All in all, I ended up replacing the inner and outer tie rods, upper and lower ball joints, and oh yeah, new axles as well. So should be a lot more solid than it was. Hoping for a lot less wobble. So a couple of things that I would have done better on this job is I would have actually replaced the wheel bearings, because they are starting to go out, and that causes vibration and wheel shake as well. So if I had unlimited funds and unlimited time, I would have definitely switched out those wheel bearings. I know I'm going to have to do it here in the near future. And also, yeah, I would have waited and got new lower control arms as well. Those I just will put back the old ones for now. They should last a little bit longer. Just like the wheel bearings, they are going to need to be replaced here in the near future. But right now I did replace a lot. The front end should be a lot safer, a lot smoother. So I'm pretty happy with the job I've done. But there's always more work to be done.